Good evening, friends, family, loved ones, well washers, and we thank you so much for taking the time and the opportunity to join us right here live on LBW Radio, even on our Facebook Live, out of depression. We have a special program in store for you guys this evening, and we give God time to come together and build this community on this platform, understanding the growth, the development, the enlightening, the inspiration, and the edifying of people everywhere. Because we know that there are many who are challenged with different aspects of also coming to guest with us from around 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Next 26 minutes or so from now, God's willing, we will have Pastor Bill Jenkins and the return of Mr. David Essel. So, before we jump into the details of the program, I want to remind you that you can call us live. Our WhatsApp number is 1-869-664-4365. That's 1-869-664-4365. And please, for those of you who are live on the chats, put your comments and your questions in the chats, and we will always respond to them in the appropriate time. Remember, we also have an ongoing online quiz. Three questions basically. Who's our program? What is his website? Name me two books that you can download on his site. So again, we welcome you in support and your commitment. And we also give thanks for Brother Dexter, our producer, the man behind the controls in the main studio of LBW Ministry. Let's go to God in prayer at this time. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your amazing love, your grace, and your mercies, which we know that are new every morning. We thank you for this opportunity, even representing your children, expand important and pertinent information with regards to struggling aspect of depression. As we do, God, and we enter into another episode of this program, we give you thanks for the information and the inspiration that you have given unto us and made this through you a great possibility. We pray for Brother Dexter and the continued support and upliftment and growth of LBW Ministries, and for all the other programs and the hosts and the facilitators of the other programs that are viewed and aired on this ministry's platform. We pray, God, that everything we do would be done in deeply share, would bring not only enlightenment and hope and a sense of upliftment to us. We ask all these mercies in no other name but the living Christ. Program or episode entitled Breaking Out of Depression. I want to welcome you with a word of support, with with regards to what you are constantly committed to doing in your life. I know that on many occasions we will have situations where we are challenged and we may wonder if it's the will of God or if it's not the will of God. We may have many questions. We may have many exists. The scriptures of great men would have also, at some point, have doubts, have concerns. We saw it with Abraham. We saw it with Moses. We saw it with Isaac and Jacob. We saw it with David and Solomon. And they would go to God and seek God's face so that they can get a purpose that God had raised at that time so he could fulfill his will and his purpose. For us to rep in these men's lives, there was one consistent thing, and that is their relationship with God was always the reason was God as their first, foremost, and constant source of all their supplies and all their needs. And we have the opportunity to have that same kind of relationship with God as well. You remember clearly in the scriptures from Psalm 13 when David was on the run from King Saul, who decided that he was going to take David's life because the level of popularity that he was supposed to have as king was falling on the shoulders of David. People were saying, Saul has slain his thousands and David has slain his tens of thousands. And that particular line, it irked him. He got vexed. Fruit of God left because of those emotions allowed them upon him. He decided in that moment that he was going to take David's life. Now, David had already been anointed to be king because Saul was already rejected by God because he failed to listen to the explicit information given by the prophet Samuel with regards to the Amalekites. For it is better to obey than to sacrifice. The point that I'm making here is that if Saul's relationship with God was sturdy enough and built upon the foundation that he was king and doing what he was doing for the nation of Israel and not for his self upliftment, self gratification, self growth, self grandizement, and recognition, then his response to that situation would have been different. But of course, on the other hand, David had been to conquer the enemy. The effects of the enemy was something that he could always rely upon because he saw that God gives the most. And of course, I'm referring to that situation with Goliath. But in addition to that, there was a specific purpose for David being anointed king at that time. And even though he was a young man, the level of family sheep was already upon his hands. That is where he had the experience of encountering the bear and the lion and knowing and seeing what God can do with his strength, with his ability, with his knowledge. And so all these things were connected not just to who David had become, but to what David had been doing with regards to his relationship. What was the foundation upon which he stood against the bear and the lion? And so the question we need to ask ourselves: what is our foundation with regards to the relationship that we have with God? Is it based just on our knowledge of or about God? Or is it based on an intimate, detailed, posturing relationship that we know we can not only live with Him in Holy Communion? And that is what makes the difference. Because if our foundation is not based upon what we want, what we need, but it is aligned with the value of the Word of God as it put, if we align our purpose with God's purpose, the only thing that could happen is that we will continue to have success. But as long as there's a clash with regards to our alignment and our values with that of God's, we will have issues that can lead us to places of doubt, places of anxiety. But avoid that. That's what I'm saying. If we find people who are in the scriptures that would have shown through their choices that their foundation was built upon the relationship that they had with God, and they relied on God as their total source of supply, strength, inspiration, it made the biggest difference in their lives. They value their own spiritual commitment, that spiritual commitment that they had with God built. I want to remind us at this time that goes to our relationship with Him, but He expects us when we are in a position of doubt, when we are in a position of uncertainty, in a position where we are not sure of the next step or the next move to make. It is not for us to conveniently seek the help of the flesh in those moments, but rather to go to God. In Matthew chapter 26, when Jesus went there with Him, and He left them and He went further off to get into prayer with them. He was doing that by he wanted to do regards to situations that would have created a sense of urgency, and they would feel the burden and the demand of in their spiritual journey after He had left them. And He knew that His time was coming close. He knew that certain things were imminent with regards to His arrest and His prosecution. But even in that moment, He knew also that He had to set the perfect example for His disciples. And so He went and He started to seek His Father's face. And on 3 occasions, He had to come and wake up Peter, James, and John. And He had to ask them, could you not watch with me for 1 hour? And they couldn't. And He declared something. He said, the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. And so many of us suffer in the flesh, suffer based on a consequence of the flesh, because we have to reach to a point where we build up that consistent and balanced level of strength, both in the spirit and in the flesh. There's a famous saying: if you see the spirit, in due time, that which of the spirit will dominate that which is of the flesh. And so we are physical in body, but we are more spiritual because we have a spirit and a soul that is eternal. And at some point in our bodies, through the spirit and the soul. But Jesus knew at that moment he had to seek the Father's face because he began to feel the burden, the weight of the responsibility, knowing that the word of God will be fulfilled, that prophecy had to come true. He had a purpose that needed to. What about you and I? Is perfect. God's will for our lives is untouchable. God's will is the will for our lives and nothing else. But often we find ourselves going our own way. And then when we get ourselves in trouble and we realize we did not take the right road or the right path, what a mess. And run to God, they're already waiting. He had gone to him in the first place. So it is my duty, it is my responsibility to remind us that when the time comes that we are called to account for our ministry and to align ourselves with that eternal foundation that God has created for all of us, there is no excuse. We cannot get away and deny the opportunities that God has, putting us to sit in heavenly places, making it possible for us to be covered with the robe of righteousness that His Son has made possible for us. Jesus sitting at the right hand of the Father, making intercession on our behalf. He is our advocate. And the legality of our existence in the Spirit is based upon His advocacy. And it is unfailing, but it is always sustainable. And that is where we have to place our commitment. That is where we have to place our foundation. That is where we must place our hope. Because at the end of the day, when we are called to account for the time that God has put us here to fulfill a particular destiny and purpose that would bring honor and glory to His name, just like He said, God did not give us to accomplish the purpose and to get His will done, because He will not leave us unfinished. We are the ones that responsible, or are responsible, if we fail or fall short. Because as long as we take the example of Christ, as it says, we must, in the book of Philippians and verse 5, the mind of Christ, the understanding of Christ, the mental attitude of Christ, the mental characteristics of even the He himself had. What then is our excuse? Why then do we still find ourselves in situations of doubt and that is missing between the spirit and the flesh? And we have to remember that we must build up the opportunity every time we get it to ensure that we strengthen the course and the ability of the Spirit to sustain us even in this physical realm. I want to remind us that when Christ was on his way to the cross, he displayed immense physical strength. If you study the history of the Romans and the way they punish people and the way they, they put that heavy wooden cross upon your shoulders and ask you to carry it all the way up to Golgotha. Physically, it was not that easy. But the thing about it, if your spirit is strong, spirit is conquered, if your spirit is aligned with God's purpose, your physical body ought to be able to fall in line as well. And the demands that you make upon it, it will happen. Because the spirit is what leads you to make the choices, the decisions. Yes, you have your soul or the heart, the place of consciousness, but that considers things. You have a spirit of concern, a spirit of doubt, a spirit of fear, and then sometimes again a spirit of hope. Well, what we actually have or seek to have is spirit of hope, where it tells us, that at the end of the day, the opportunity that we have as Christians to excel in Christ's kingdom is limitless. The only limitations are the ones that we place on ourselves. And so at the end of the day, what we need to do is rise up to the occasion, rise up to the standard that He's called us to upkeep and also to sustain. So, what I'd like to do at this time is to remind 869-664-435. We have a guest that is with us in the studio at this time. And I also want to remind us that we have the ongoing quiz with regards to the name of the first guest. That's question number one. Question number two, I see we have Pastor Bill Jenkins being let into the studio. And let me get this information because I want to properly introduce him at this time. But remember the three questions in the quiz. What is his website address? And number three, there are three books that he said we can download freely from his website. So, at this time, on our guest who is supposed to be joining us, and his name is Pastor Bill Jenkins. Just got a word. Pastor Bill Jenkins is an award-winning author. He is also a television host. He is the founder and the senior pastor of Destinyland Christian Center in Rancho Cucamonga in California. He is a married man to his wife, Britain. He married in 1998. They have three sons, Bryce, Brock, and Brady, and firmly believe that in leader of any kind, you must be, first of all, a good leader and a godly man in your home.
That's him.
So if he is here, Brother Bill, okay, we may be having some technical that Pastor Bill is in the studio, and we like him to join us as I just made the intro. Pastor Bill.
Yeah, I can hardly hear you. You're cutting in and out a lot, but I am here and it's great to be with you.
Okay, Pastor Bill Jenkins, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you and look awesome as always. And just loving the opportunity we have today to talk about this and to, really maybe help some people and
technical
make a difference in their lives. Something's wrong.
Welcome to the show, Pastor that you took to join us. Entitled "Breaking Out of Depression." Let me apologize with the program. We want to go back to some of your childhood days. Remember or recall some of the things that you would have endured as a young man growing up that would have led to a place of depression. Can you tell us a bit about your childhood days and some of the challenges that you faced?
Well,
Right.
I tell you
Can
what,
you hear me, Pastor?
I can, but it's real choppy. It's sort of in and out, so I'm having a very hard time, but I'm kind of picking up a little bit on your question. You asked me about my childhood. And, when I was a kid, I did not have a good example set for me as far as a marriage. My mom and dad, they were together for a little while, maybe 4 or 5 years of my childhood, but my dad was very physically abusive, and that sort of led to them getting a divorce. And so the opportunity to be depressed, the opportunity to maybe look at life and all of its bad wrinkles that it throws you, was present in my life as an early age. So I had to learn how to really sort of cope with these things without having the Lord in my life the way I do now. It was tough to get through those times. And so now looking back, I am way more well equipped to be able to help people, to encourage them to get through some of those tough times, because sometimes life circumstances sort of evolve in our life to a point where it causes a Great Depression.
Yeah, I will continue despite the challenges that we have. And I want to welcome Mr. David Estel as well on this special edition of Breaking Out of Depression.
Andy, great to be with you,
David,
brother.
how are you?
Hey, it's great to be with you.
But we're gonna continue with this program despite the challenges. We did Satan a liar at this time. He's not going to disrupt what we are planning to do. So Bill would have faced as a young man, but it did not deter him from fulfilling his purpose. David, what Pastor Bill just said with regards to his childhood and as a comparison to yours, how he faced a cycle of depression and became successful as you are today.
Andy, I'm not sure if I heard you ask a question or not. We're breaking up a little bit here. If there was a question, please restate it, because I couldn't quite hear it.
Good evening, good evening. I'm Pastor Bill Jenkins and David. It is good to see you again, David. My name is Dexter Honore. I'm the one behind the controls. It appears that Brother Andy is having a little internet issue. We are on the internet and this could happen. I could hear Pastor Bill very clearly, and I could also hear you, David, very clearly. So hopefully Brother Andy will reconnect in a few minutes. However, he wanted Pastor Bill to highlight, his childhood history and the challenges that you encountered growing up as an individual. Okay, he's back. Let's see if his internet access is much better.
Okay.
Okay, just consistently my system in place, but the question about your childhood challenges.
I think that a lot of us, Andy, grew up with the same childhood challenges that I have. I mean, every overly sensitive child. Oh, should I continue? I thought I heard someone interrupt, but I think all children, especially those of us who are incredibly sensitive in nature, have a hard time in childhood. Even if you have great parents, it's depression doesn't always come just because we have terrible parents. We may have parents that don't understand how to parent the best, and of course that could create some kind of challenges. But I think a lot of us are so super sensitive that if we're not given an opportunity to express our emotions as children, and that was one of the struggles that I had, we become angry. And believe it or not, one of the foundation emotional sparks, if you will, of depression is anger, unresolved anger. It's the number one cause of depression. We have a lot of confusion in society regarding, is depression a genetic disorder or not? And probably about 90% of physicians and studies would agree with me that we have never found a gene just for depression. We've never found a gene just for anxiety. We've never found a gene for a lot of these conditions that people say are genetically linked. Even obesity, we still don't have a direct link to that, as a matter of fact. And what's really unfortunate that we can't find the genes for the specific genes is that then that means treatment can be so difficult for a lot of different people. Now, a lot of times individuals that are grown up and they don't have the emotional support from mom or dad, or they're a single parent that's struggling with multiple jobs and they don't have the emotional capability to raise a child the way a child needs to be raised, especially a hypersensitive one. We could have parents that are depressed and grandparents that are depressed and aunts and uncles. And so we think it's genetically based, but it's not. Now, according to research, if you have certain genes lined up perfectly, that could lead to depressive episodes or anxiety, general anxiety disorder, it's called. With general anxiety disorder, what we mean is we really don't know what's causing it, but an individual is going through periods of anxiety. Maybe it's interfering with sleep, or maybe they're overeating or undereating, but we haven't found that one gene yet. So I think a lot of people growing up, if you were, and I'm going to go back to the sensitivity issue because, I've been in this work as a counselor therapist for 43 years, and I see those individuals that are super sensitive. A lot of them are very creative. If they were not given the outlet as children to express their emotions, and when I say this, I'm being dead serious. This is what we teach parents today. Allow your child to be angry. Allow your child to be frustrated. Allow your child to feel victimized by friends is what I'm talking about in that case. Allow your child to freaking feel. Allow them to express it. We just did a video on my YouTube channel, and it's called Back to School Anxiety. And going back to school, it can be a very anxiety producing experience for a lot of kids, especially if they're going back to a school where that maybe they were bullied or they were kicked out of their favorite cliques. It's very tough. It creates a lot of anxiety. Maybe they had a teacher last year that was really rough on them and they're nervous that they may have another one. Or maybe they transferred to a new school and they don't know anyone and they're scared. You know, one of the things that parents do, and I know that us parents, we do our best until we learn how to do better, is that a lot of times, you know, we will release those comments. Oh, honey, don't worry about it. You make friends everywhere you go. Oh, you know, just because that guy was there last year, you know, they have new rules with bullying. Don't even worry about it. He's not going to say a thing to you. He won't even come near you. You know, we're going back into the environment where that this child has had a lot of stress. And listen to this statement, because this is probably the most powerful statement I can make. If we don't allow our children to express their anger, their rage, their insecurity, their fear, etc., what we're doing is we're shoving those emotions down their throat. We're literally shoving them down their throat. So all the well-meaning quotes like, oh, you're great at meeting people, you'll meet a lot of people. No, don't worry about that. That was last year. That's not this year. Oh, the teachers this year we hear are great. Stop the nonsense. Ask questions. Allow the child to feel heard. Allow the child to feel that they matter, that their emotions are important. And so if someone is going to a new school and you say, honey, I understand. My gosh, if I was going to a new school, even at my age, I'd be feeling nervous. Can you tell me more about what you're anxious about? Can you tell me more about what you're nervous about? Can you tell me more about now? This is also a great teaching opportunity for parents to explain what anxiety is, what depression is, what rage is, if they've never done it. But I think, you know, that's one of the things that I've seen in this 43 years of practice. You know, most of our depression starts between the ages of 0 and 7, 0 and 6. That's usually the starting point. And then it follows up until 18. Now, if you grew up in a family with a depressed or two depressed parents, it could be what they call epigenetic depression, which means that we're picking up those examples of depression from other adults and for adults, and we're modeling them. It's not that we have a gene that's creating the depression, we're modeling them. So, you know, my greatest difficulty as a child growing up was because I was so sensitive. I took everything so serious. I have a great sense of humor. I had a great sense of humor as a kid, but I was also incredibly insecure. It didn't matter how gifted I was in sports and everything else. If I had a bad game, I wanted to come home and say, you know, I'm so mad the coach didn't put me in at the last 2 minutes, or I'm so mad I missed that layup, and I'm so mad. And what we teach parents now to do, with my parents just passed in the last couple of years, and they were phenomenal. They were awesome. I love them to death. But from 0 to 18, we had a battleground in my house. I will not dispute that. It was very difficult. My mom was amazing. I went through so many struggles with depression, addiction, you name it, starting at the age of 12. And she was always there for me. Now, I didn't recognize until my late 20s, early 30s, that she was always there for me. I looked at her and my dad as enemies growing up. I really did, because I had so much to let out. And I still do to this day. I'll go through periods of time where I have a lot of frustration and I have to find outlets for it. Well, as a child, if your outlet is closed, if you have nowhere to share your emotions, where are they going? They don't disappear. They go into the world of food addiction for children. The percentage of children overweight around the world today is at the highest it's ever been. So that's one of the ways that kids deal with depression. I have a client that I've worked with now, very successful, but he struggled with the weight his whole life. We went back to the origin. When did this start? When did this overeating start? And when did this emotional eating start? Because that's what it was. And we went back and found the origin. He was raised in a very abundant, financially abundant family. I think it was 6 brothers and sisters or something like that. And for some reason, his father never wanted anything to do with him. So around the age of between 8 and 10, when the father was going around the kitchen table and asking all the children how their day was, he went right past my client. Now imagine as a child what that would feel like. Imagine as that child sitting there. And so one day, when his father was asking everyone else how they were doing, they used to have the small packets of sugar on the table. And when the father wasn't missing, the kid grabbed like 4. And when no one was looking, he would put one underneath his tongue, the full packet of sugar, then another one, then another one. And he found relief. because sugar acts on the pleasure center of the brain like alcohol. And so here's this child, abundant family, emotionally absent, neglected, and he found a way out of his depression. He was extremely depressed as a child, but food was his best friend. So you can imagine he comes into my office at 50 years of age, very overweight. He had carried that forward, that when he feels rejected, not listened to, whatever the words are, even as an adult, he goes right to food. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions about depression, especially the whole genetic thing. I think there's a lot we can teach the world about depression. And one of the most important things I can say is I don't care if you're 5 years of age listening to this. If you are, you're an advanced soul and you'll probably go on to be the president of some massive country if you're listening to Andy's program at 5. But I think whether you're 5 or 85, we need to find a way to vent. We need to find a way to release the anger, the rage, the insecurity, the doubt, the lack of connection in this world. And we need to find a way to give those voices, and they're not bad. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, they're all signs that something's off. It's not like you're a bad person because you have freaking depression. It means that there's something off. And we need to look for ways that we can love ourselves more. And believe it or not, one of the ways we love ourselves more is by venting the rage, anger, insecurity, shame, guilt, resentment, whatever it is. It's one of the ways that we help people move away and up from depression, anxiety, and other such mental and emotional challenges into feeling more comfortable and more confident. But without that release, well, you can imagine, if you put a steam kettle on the fire without a topper that blows, it's going to combust, right? At some point, that water and that steam has no outlet. It's going to blow. And that's what happens with a lot of children or adults. If they don't have that regular release valve, exercise, meditation, prayer, most importantly, a confidant they can trust that will allow them to say anything in the world, and they won't tell them you shouldn't feel that way. That is one of the most crucial things I can share on this program today. I don't care if your partner is 40 or if they're 90, or if we're talking about a 6-year-old child. Allow them, teach them. If they don't know how to vent, teach them how to vent. Teach them how to journal their anger, rage, insecurity. There's so many outlets that we have today. I think if we started to look at this as the basis treatment for depression, number one, allowing them to have their feelings and not telling them being enraged or depressed or anxious is bad. It's not bad. It's part of life. Now, how can we help you? I think that's what's needed, step one, in this world to help battle depression.
Thank you so much, David. I do appreciate that. Brother Andy had to step out. Brother Andy had to step out for a brief moment. So therefore, I'm going to fill in for a few minutes. I'm not too sure how well I'm going to do. However, and before I ask a follow-up question, I would like to say good night to our viewers on Facebook and also to all the listeners listening via LBW Radio. We do appreciate your presence, and we do hope and pray that you will indeed be blessed tonight. Don't forget, you can put your comments in the chat, and we will definitely seek to respond to those questions. You may have a question for David tonight. You missed him a few weeks ago. You have the opportunity to ask a few questions. So welcome again, David, to LBW Radio. You said quite a few things that caught my attention. And one of the things that you mentioned, and that never dawned on me, is that a child could suffer with depression, and the effects can last almost a lifetime if they do not get the proper treatment, or they do not find an outlet to vent or to get rid of that combustion that is taking place within them. And that to me was alarming. And truly, I need to pay a lot more attention to my children and look for various signs. So I'm not too sure if there are any other areas regarding that line that you would like to elaborate or expound on this evening.
Wait, say the last part again. I'm so sorry. It's a little fuzzy to listen.
Okay, I was saying that you mentioned, children suffer from depression, and based on what you mentioned is that that child could suffer with depression, and it could have a lasting effect if they do not get it under control. So I would like to know if you have any other thoughts that you would like to share, because as a parent, this is now I'm becoming now more aware that I need to pay more attention to my children.
I think it's brilliant what you just said. You know, we aren't taught this, unfortunately. Most parents aren't taught to allow their children to be human beings, to be individuals, to have their own emotions, and to be able to let them out. Unfortunately, in most societies, children are better off seen and not heard. That still old motto holds true in a lot of places, and that's because when we pass down generation to generation parenting skills, if they're not changed, right, then how would we know to do it any better? We're just doing it differently. And let me give you a personal example. In 1980, I had I've never had my own children, but I've helped raise children through different people that I've been with. And in 1980, I had the first opportunity to be with a woman that had a 2-year-old child. And we talked about parenting, and we talked about if we were going to be together for a while, that, how we were going to co-parent this child, because the child's father was really no longer in the picture. And so I said, well, when this little boy reaches 3, let's see if we can get him out of the high chair and into a regular high top to feel more like a big boy. And she said, how were you raised as a child? And I told her, and I said, some of the things, my parents would say to me, like, you're not leaving the table until your peas are done. Sometimes they were a little over aggressive with some of these things at the dinner table. So I'm going to make sure not to do that. But listen to this. When it came time and the child turned 3, I just went back into my old method of operation of parenting, of how my parents raised me. And so after about 30 days, she pulled me aside one day and said, hey, I thought we weren't going to do this thing. If you don't finish your peas, there's going to be a penalty. And I go, oh my gosh, I forgot. So some of these things we carry forward. And as a therapist, I'm going, how could I forget that? That's one of the things that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to penalize children around food. Now, eating too much, we can take care of that by making sure we're super active and then cutting back on certain foods, but forcing children to eat food is something that my parents were raised by, their parents were raised by, but we don't teach that anymore. And one other comment I want to make, I think that's really important, that you mentioned, someone could have depression at 6 and it might carry through their whole lifetime. My depression, even as a counselor, therapist, executive coach, author, all the different titles I have, my depression was not discovered until I had a failed suicide attempt in 1990. And the psychiatrist who worked with me after that attempt made me go through all of these psychological tests. Now, what's interesting is when I was a little kid, going back into the 50s and 60s, they didn't think that kids got depression. They didn't think that kids battled with anxiety. They kept saying, oh, that's adults. Your little kid, your little boy, David, has allergies, and that's why he's acting out. And that's why he's angry a lot. It's because of the allergies, but it wasn't. So in 1990, the psychiatrist takes me through all of these different mental health tests. And however you want to look at it, I either failed or I graduated on every test. In other words, they found, which makes sense with a failed suicide attempt, they found that I had deep clinical depression, a deep generalized anxiety disorder, ADD, and ADHD. Now, we didn't know that going back into my childhood. I had those conditions ever since I was a little child, but it wasn't until, I don't even know how old I was in 1990. Let's say I was 30, I forget now. But, it wasn't until then that I went through a crisis that we actually started to looking at my mental health through tests that are available. And I scored off the charts on all of them. So nowadays, the good news is that pediatricians have the same ability to take a 6, a 10, a 12, a 14-year-old through diagnostic questioning, and really good pediatricians can diagnose depression in a child. And then we can start to look at different options, like I just mentioned, making sure they're venting, making sure they have a release of their emotions. These type of things are crucial. But I love the fact that you said if we don't heal depression, it can last a lifetime, because that is so true. And you know, even though I was doing what I loved, even though I was doing for all those years as a therapist what I'm on earth for, I was struggling with mental health challenges that I could not self-diagnose until after that event that could have been tragic. And then afterwards, I started to look at all the different things I needed to do. Like, and one of the things I needed to do was I needed to express myself at the moment I'm feeling it. Whether the emotion is considered positive or negative, it doesn't matter. I've learned that I've got to get my emotions out verbally and writing, however I can, in order to feel that my brain chemistry is calm, that I'm coming from a logical place, that I have emotional regulation. All of this is crucially important when we're dealing with something like depression. Okay, now I'm going to try to read this. Unfortunately, I'm on my iPhone. Let me see. Hold on. I have some glasses right here. Oh my God, what a day. Okay. Can a child manifest dizziness as a way to mask their feelings? My stepson has these spells, and sometimes we breathe through them and focusing on just one thought in that helps, but sometimes he gets them really bad, throws up, and has to sleep. Doctor thinks it's vertigo, but I have tracked the pattern, and I notice a lot is when he's sad, upset, or mad about something. Any advice on that? He has been underneath extreme stress. Well, first of all, I'd like to know how old your child is. That would help me. If you could just type again how old your child is.
While we're waiting for Amanda to type.
Okay, I'm sure she'll type again. So,
yes,
so let me answer some of the questions.
Brother Andy's back in the studio. And
Andy's back?
Yes, and she just said 12.
Oh, 12. Okay, he's 12. All right, so, you know, now, if it's vertigo, what I would want to know from your doctor, I would ask your doctor, what are all
12 years.
I'm sorry? It is vertigo. So if it's been diagnosed with vertigo, what I would do is I would ask the doctor, and then I would Google what are natural holistic treatments for vertigo for your 12-year-old son. That's the very first thing I would do. Number one. Number two, it could, you know, I hate to use the word psychosomatic without knowing your child, but there are many ways that mental challenges are manifested due to submerged emotions. So I would want to find out, like, and since he's 12, assuming that he's able to communicate with you well, I would have him write down those emotions that bother him the most: anxiety, depression, fear. Okay, this is this is the same one I saw before. But I would have him list out those emotions, right? And then I would look at each one, and let's say he said anxiety is one of them. I would say, honey, what makes you, write down what makes you, everything that makes you anxious, write down, you know, everything that makes you mad, write down, everything that makes you feel insecure. In other words, I would start to teach him how to process emotions, because if we can get to the bottom of what's creating the anxiety, the depression, the insecurity, or whatever he's dealing with, we might be able to completely minimize the effect of vertigo just by giving him that option to express. But at the same time, I wouldn't hesitate to Google natural healing techniques for vertigo and see, you know, is there something in his diet that is kicking this vertigo in? That's something I would look at, because there's a lot of dietary sensitivities these days that we haven't seen in the past 20, 30 years. I mean, gluten, of course, is a sensitivity to gluten has been around forever, but there's many more that have come out that, you know, dairy is one. And so I would also track when he has any type of an effect like what they're calling vertigo. I would track what did he eat that day and the day before. I would look to see if there's something he's consuming that happens to click on the days he eats X. We have that type of experience. Any other questions, please send them. I'm hoping that this helps.
But Andy, can you unmute your mic?
Yeah. Was it Amanda? Did she hear everything that we just shared?
Yes, she did, and she has a follow-up question that I'm going to put on the screen.
Okay. Let me see here. Hold on. We do talk about feelings and encourage them to feel them and know they are okay. Love the food idea. Yeah. Okay, good. Now, Amanda, also when we're talking about those feelings, and I'm glad that you're doing it, I would really want them to put it in writing. Okay, writing is a world of difference versus talking and thinking. And in the world of therapy, we're trained to be talk therapists, but it's a bunch of nonsense, to be honest with you. Talk therapy is step one, but more important than that is written therapy. When your child and you see his answers for this is what creates anxiety, this is what causes my insecurity. I think we just put something else back up. Yeah, I really like the journal idea. He only speaks to me about them as many others don't hear him. Yeah. Oh, journaling is huge. It'll give him an extra vent, Amanda. It'll give him an extra release valve. Makes him feel unseen. Yeah. Oh, totally makes sense. Yeah. So if you can keep the conversation going with him, when he's feeling down, and then get him to put it in writing, my gosh, there could be a huge change. Then the other question I have for you, Amanda, what is his physical activity like? Does he have any on a regular basis? What does he do for how long? And I'm not talking about video games. I'm talking about actual physical activity that would tire him, that would release dopamine and serotonin into the brain, because those are huge helps when we're talking about any type of mental challenge. So when you have a chance, if you could, send me another little chat thing here, saying how active he is, how many days per week, how many minutes per day, what he does, we might be able to do some help here as well. But the writing is everything. Oh my goodness.
David, awesome stuff. I would like to know, I'm a parent. Okay, before I share that thought with you, Amanda is in the chat and we're going to put up.
Okay, here we go. He likes to go on a jumper and swimming, but the bright glare makes him dizzy. That's definitely the vertigo. Absolutely whatsoever. So you know what now where's the bright glare coming from? On a jumper and swim, but the bright glare, is that from water? I'm assuming the bright glare. He isn't very active due to summertime, but started school today. Okay. Physical activity, unfortunately, is a lost art for children. When we grew up, we had no choice because we had to go outside or we get our butt spanked. The water or the sun. Yeah. So what I would do is continue to look for activities that allow him to be tired, that allow him to expend energy, because during that expenditure of energy, that's when dopamine and serotonin are released from the brain. Now, I want to mention something else about diet. Because 60 to 70% of serotonin, which is a hugely important neurotransmitter for depression, is in the gut, actually. 60 to 70% of serotonin is stored in the gut. So what that means is if he has a diet that isn't super clean, a lot of those feel-good chemicals can get stuck in the intestinal tract. I just read you said you love that. So, we want to make sure that he's pushing through with exercise. He's getting tired. The endorphins are being released in the brain. And then to make sure that every part of that serotonin is available. And I know this might be really tough for 12-year-olds because, they get into the habit of snack foods and convenience foods and all that kind of stuff. But if we can get him to clean up the diet as well, I think you can see some really good changes moving forward too.
Awesome stuff, David. I don't know, I'm getting a little bit excited in the studio here because you are definitely sharing information that I, as a parent, can definitely use, and most definitely Amanda is benefiting from tonight's session. There's one more comment that she posted.
Okay, let's see. A big meat eater, loves salads and some veggies, but super picky. Okay, what I would do is I would find those vegetables and salads that he does like and give him the stuff he likes. I wouldn't force him. This is one of the things I know well-meaning parents always say, you have to eat your broccoli before you leave the table. If that turns into a battle, it's not worth it, right? Let's find other vegetables. If he's a big meat eater, if it's affordable to do super clean meat, Organic is preferred. That would be really good because a lot of our meat supplies are just packed with hormones. If there's any way that, you know, it's affordable to go more organic, I would highly recommend doing that. From a price point of view, if it meant you had to cut back on some of the food that he eats amount wise, I would do that and add more vegetables. The vegetables are crucial. I'm big on psychology, so I'm trying to go holistic as much as possible. Have him on a vitamin regimen as well. Amanda, you're doing awesome, honey. You're kicking it. You're doing great. Keep up with the great work. And then what we're talking about today, you know, like find that physical exercise that there's no sun, no bright lights. I know that that's a trigger for migraines and vertigo. So we want to make sure that, you know, he's given the opportunity to expire that energy in a 12-year-old, for gosh sake. Maybe that's going to help dramatically. That with the journaling. And Amanda, don't forget, and for everyone with us today too, it's so important to dig down with kids when it comes to emotions, because, you know, children aren't born understanding what anxiety is. You know, they make, I feel anxious. And you go, well, what is anxiety? I don't know. I just feel it. Well, we can go ahead and explain it. You know, where does it show up? Most of the times anxiety shows up in the stomach, the chest, or the head. Very different than depression. So we want to sort of explain all this to him. Going to do the exercise, food, and journals. Thank you so much. You're very welcome. Oh, you're very, very welcome. I'm glad that we could chat tonight.
Awesome. Brother Andy, how is your audio at this moment?
I'm not sure. You're gonna have to tell me. I've been struggling how my son.
There is still a little lag. Nonetheless, we could hear you a bit.
All right.
Okay, David.
I just wanted to
ask
David one question here, and it's concerning.
I wonder if Andy could put his question in a chat and show it here, and then I could answer it. Could we do that?
Yes, we could definitely try that. Okay. He could type it in the private chat. And
yeah, that'd be great.
We just had a comment on Facebook. Good program tonight, David. It's like
wonderful, Gracie. Thank you so much. Thank you, appreciate it.
While Brother Andy's typing his question, I would like to know what are some other signs that a parent can look for in a child. My children are between ages 1 and 10. My youngest, he will be 2 this month, and my eldest is 10 years old.
Okay. So some of the other signs that sometimes we see with children when they're starting on that pathway of depression is they'll start to isolate more. They'll start to want to be by themselves more. They'll start to lose interest in being with their friends. And sometimes they start to lose interest in their favorite hobbies. These are all signs that something's going on that we're not talking about that we need to. You know, and believe it or not, here's a sign of depression that a lot of parents don't think about. If a child feels that in order for them to be accepted, and this is peer pressure, that they have to hang around with certain kids, and let's say those certain kids aren't the best for your child, a child battling depression, as strange as this sounds, may be drawn to groups of kids and feel like they're part of a clan, a group, a clique, or whatever, even if it isn't good for them. They may start moving towards kids that aren't that great for them. Because their depression is so deep, they're looking to be accepted. I mean, this is how cults and gangs start. Cults and gangs start by looking for people that have mental health issues, low confidence, depression, anxiety. And, you know, I don't mean this to scare any parents. It's just the fact of the world. Listen, there's cults in elementary schools. They're called little gangs, right? They're called cliques. There's cults in junior high. There's cults in high school. There's cults or cliques in college. It's freaking all over the place. And one of the signs of depression is low self-confidence and low self-esteem. So that depressed child may be drawn to the wrong side of the tracks because they get attention, because they get people saying, oh, it's great to see you. And, let's do this together. And those things that they're doing may not be healthy, but the child feels he has a connection. So a change in friends that doesn't look good, a change in behavior that doesn't look good. Now, when we get to clothing and hairstyles and all that's a little dicey. Too many times parents may look at that as that their child is rebelling, and what their child is doing is they're trying to find their independent space, their identity. Now, could that be a sign of depression? Maybe, but that's an outlier. Children are experimenting. They're trying to figure out who they are and how do they look their best at 12, right? How do they look their best at 14? And if the pressure is to have, a shaved head, or the pressure is to have long hair, or the pressure to wear baggy clothes or whatever, I think parents can allow children to explore their own identity, which might help them. Instead of a parent cutting down, oh, you look terrible in those baggy pants, or why are you wearing that stupid shirt? Those are the type of things that can actually shut a child down from communicating with a parent when they need to the most. Oh, okay. Great question. How do adults adjust to dealing with depression through diet and exercise? Okay. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to remove, and we're talking about depression. What are some of the substances that we consume that could actually deepen depression? So one is alcohol, right? I mean, alcohol is a depressant, for God's sake. So when you have depression and you're drinking alcohol, all you're doing is deepening your depression. So that's number one. Nicotine, number two. Now, this is going to sound interesting. Nicotine, whether it's vaped or in a cigarette, is one of the most powerful anti-anxiety drugs in the world. Now, at first, that sounds good. But the problem is that when you submerge anxiety, it's got to go somewhere. The problem is that when you submerge anxiety, it's got to go somewhere. So what we want to do is we want to look at some of these, So what we want to do is we want to hear a little feedback from myself here. What we want to do is, if an adult is dealing with depression, we want to look at what are we consuming on a regular basis. If it's alcohol, nicotine, anything that's submerging emotions. The other one that is surprising to a lot of people is sugar. I mentioned sugar earlier with my client that came to me at 50 years of age. He's been obese his whole life, and it was sugar that got him to feel good. Like sugar numbs depression, it numbs anxiety. So I know this is tough for a lot of us, but eliminating sugar can be a huge aid because all that's doing is tapping down the depression. It's not allowing you to even know it's there. So these are some of the foods, and then we go back to what I talked about Amanda with her 12-year-old. The same type of thing, as many fruits and vegetables and salads, lean meats. As if you can afford organic is the way to go. But when you change your diet, remember what I said earlier about serotonin in the gut, in the intestines? When you go to a clean diet and you get rid of all the crap food, it's amazing how people start to feel so much better. They'll tell me they haven't lost a pound, but they'll tell me they feel lighter with the new type of diet. Now, all this sounds fantastic. All this sounds awesome. It ain't as easy as it sounds. We have patterns that may have been with us since 6 and we're 40 or 50 or 60, that every day we eat sugar, or every day we smoke cigarettes, or every day we drink alcohol. Now, we're probably not starting at 6, but you guys get the idea. When you're 40 or 50 or 60 and you've had a dietary program that has, even if it's not healthy, that's been with you that long, there's going to be some withdrawal. You're going to miss that sugar. You're going to crave it. You're going to want it. And what we say then is every time you have a craving for sugar and it won't stop, drink 16 ounces of water fast. I promise you, it's going to stop it. And then the other thing we do when we're talking about depression, now this has nothing to do with food or drinking or anything like that, but we know that the essential oil of lavender is a powerful relaxant. You can get it in a tiny little bottle. They're not that expensive. And when people are feeling depressed, inhale lavender as a relaxant. Or the other essential oil that's awesome with depression is called lemongrass oil. Lemongrass oil lifts our spirits. It gives us focus and energy. So those are two alternative ways that we can deal with depression and anxiety. Both of them work incredibly well. But the major lifestyle change of eliminating sugar and alcohol and nicotine and adding really healthy food is a massive change to the brain chemistry, which should help dramatically with depression. On top of that, there's two other things I highly encourage. Number one, if you're into prayer and you're big into prayer, take that first hour of every day and immerse yourself in scripture, in prayer, in communicating with your higher power, God, whatever you call them. Get engaged first thing with this. This is crucial. If you're into that, if you're not into prayer, meditation, we have a free meditation audio on YouTube. If you Google David Essel on YouTube and then just put meditation, you'll see a 44-minute meditation. Oh my Lord, you could wake up every day and instead of turning on the news or looking at your darn phone, which will actually deepen your depression if you want to know the truth, watch something powerfully beautiful. If you're going to use anything electronic, make sure that it's something gorgeous. Listen to, there's crystal bowl meditations on YouTube for free that are awesome. My meditation audio is for free. Listen to that first thing in the morning. But we need to make lifestyle changes as adults or children when we're dealing with something as deleterious as depression. Okay, next, what about career issues? Finding out that you hate the job that you do, but you can't leave because of your family commitments. Oh my gosh, what a great question. Because if you're doing something you can't stand 8 hours a day, we are walking ourselves into depression, aren't we? We're walking ourselves into frustration, aren't we? Now, never jeopardize your family, but there's several options we have right now. The first one is going to be the most difficult. The first one is to change your attitude. Every day you go into that office, sit in your car, have something in front of you that you're going to read to change the mindset. Go in, lift other people's spirits, say hi to everyone. And let me tell you a true story. I have an attorney in the United States of America who's been a client of mine for a while now. She was struggling with depression big time, working in a very powerful law office as an attorney. She would go in every day, shut the door, and come out at 6 o'clock at night. She interacted with no one. She didn't like where she was working. The pressure was too much. The work was so hard. So we looked at what our options. One is looking for another job, and we had all these options. And then I said, hey, what about this? What about going in and taking the first 30 minutes and going into every person that you can meet in 30 minutes? And you're going to give yourself a timeline. You get in at 8, from 8 to 8:30, you're going to go and say hi to as many people in the office as you can. That was a year ago. Her depression is almost completely gone from this one change. She needed that social interaction. And when she got it, she found the job wasn't as terrible as she thought. So that's option one. Change your mindset. Go in, lift the spirit, lift the company. Go to your boss and say, hey, I want to do more. I know you think I'm crazy right now, and that's okay. Most people do think I'm crazy. I've accepted it for a long time. Number two, can you work that job? And can you start looking on the side for something to do on weekends, even 2 to 4 hours a day to make up for the money? Number three, while you're working that job, can you start sending out resumes confidentially to other positions that might be better suited for you? And number four, is there a better position in the company you're in right now than the one you have? Can you go to your boss or human resources department and say, hey, listen, I've been in this position for a while. I don't really think it meets who I am, what my gifts are, what my strengths are, what my talents are. Could we sit down and see, even if it's a lateral move within the company, is there a better place for me that might fit my personality? These are just some of the options if you're an adult struggling with depression and a job you don't like, but you have a family to support.
David, the questions are coming in, but I can't help but acknowledge one of the points that you made, and that is a change of mindset. I'm a strong believer in the Word of God, and the Word of God tells us, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. If you change your perspective, you may not be able to change your circumstances, But if you change the way you view things, it can help change your circumstance. Does that make sense?
Oh, it's 1,000% accurate. 100% correct. If I had a gold star, I would reach through this phone and put it on your forehead. Would you allow me?
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Here we go. Wait, where's my thumb? I just put a gold star there. You are 1,000% correct. Now, with that change in mindset, we also have to understand we're human beings. And we might go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, be on top of the world, and Thursday may be tough. And that's okay. We're humans. We're trying to change our perspective. We're trying to change our mindset. So give yourself, if you go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you nail it, and then on Thursday you have a bad day, go back in there Friday again. But don't get discouraged and say, oh, I did my best for 3 days and it didn't change anything. It may not change anything for 6 months, but it's worth it. If you can go in and lift spirits, it's worth it. Give it a chance. Okay, here we go. Okay, how do married couples handle depression, especially if it arises in the early stages of marriage? Woo! You guys are not giving me easy stuff to answer today. Oh my God. Very first thing would be professional help. It's really hard for couples to heal their own stuff within their own marriage. And that's why we have ministers and pastors and counselors and therapists and relationship coaches and everything else. I would say, first of all, we're lucky. If we find this early in the marriage, we're very, very lucky. And what I would say is the next step is, because we're not trained professionals in how to do this, bring a trained professional in, get their feedback, get their opinion. The other thing is that I would go on Amazon and I would Google that question about, marriage and overcoming challenges. I don't discount any option of healing when we have so many options in the world, the internet, Amazon, ministers, pastors, therapists. I mean, we have a lot of support in this world. And one of the problems with depression is that there's a lot of people that are afraid to admit they're depressed, and that completely shoots ourselves in the foot. It's not a sign of weakness to be depressed. What I'm going to say next may shock people. It's a sign of weakness to not tell a professional you're battling depression. That's the weakness. That's what we have to overcome. That's what we have to work through. Okay, here we go. Amanda. I remind my son that it's the devil trying to take him down and to turn to God to reach up for the light. That's how we get through the spells sometimes. Yeah, listen, to me, in my opinion, and everyone has their own opinion and everyone's entitled to their own opinion, God is pure love, just absolutely pure love, just the purest love in the world. If you can ask your son and recommend to your son, and your son is saying, I'm turning to God when I'm struggling, good for you, good for your son. Tell your son that David Essel, you watched him today and he thinks your son is a rock star for learning how to turn to God during a time of toughness. That's just beautiful, beautiful. Reward him every time he does it. And before I forget, before we end, we have 3 books on for free at our website, talkdavid.com. And one of them, Helping Americans Heal, it's absolutely free. We talk about depression and anxiety and PTSD and every mental health issue in the world is Helping Americans Heal. That's absolutely free. The book you can go and grab right now at talkdavid.com. We have a gratitude journal that we can actually take people and help people learn how it is to journal from a gratitude point of view. It's called the Ultimate Gratitude Journal, as I try to get it in front of the camera here. But there's many, many tools out there to help people dealing with mental health issues. And we just came out with a brand new book about mental health for professional athletes. So this stuff, thank gosh, it's coming to the forefront that we can all talk about it. And people like Amanda can bring up that her 12-year-old is struggling with depression. 30, 40 years ago, you never would have done that. So we're more liberated these days. We have more access to care, whether it's the internet or your doctor or therapist or minister or pastor. I mean, we're in a great place as long as we keep talking and working through the challenges. Don't turn a blind eye. Don't turn the other cheek and say, oh, he's just going through what 12-year-olds go through. Now, puberty, that's something else, Amanda, that you can talk to your doctor about. But when the hormones start racing, they can create all kinds of different havoc with different people. When one person's going through puberty, they may go through it with hardly anything. It's like when a woman gets her first period. You know, some young girls have very difficult times with their periods, a lot of pain, and then others just sort of skip through it. So we don't know with your son at 12 going into puberty, or in puberty probably right now. Usually the boys are starting now at 9 and 10. My gosh. You know, that could be something to talk to your doctor about as well. Thank you so much. I found y'all today through Pastor Bill. Such a blessing. Well, I appreciate that. And I don't know Pastor Bill, but thank you, Pastor Bill, for bringing your people on the show.
Pastor Bill was on a little earlier. He may have had some internet issues and we lost him for a moment. But I notice our time is coming to an end, but usually time flies by when you're having fun. Time flies by when you're having fun. And one of the things that was said that I just can't overlook is the fact that we are living in a time where we have a better healthcare. We have a lot of information available to us, yet there are individuals suffering with depression. Why is that? Why is that?
I think, you know, part of it is it's that fear of being honest, you know, the fear of being vulnerable, the fear that someone may criticize you or tell you you're making it up, you're just trying to get attention or something like that. You know, there's a lot of fear around mental health. And that's one of the things you just said, and I'm glad you reiterated it. We have so many more tools today than we did even 5 years ago. You know, and let's remind everyone of this. Depression, one of the reasons it's at an all-time high is because of what we've gone through in the last 4 years. My gosh, you know, we've never experienced this type of turmoil. Now the inflation that's hit recently the world, and, you know, my gosh, we have to have a little bit of self-compassion. We do have to have compassion for ourselves and others, because this isn't anything that any of us have ever gone through. We don't even have record books from our ancestors, unless you look at the Spanish flu of 1916. But that's different than today. But we don't have record books of people going through these outrageously 4 years of absolute heck on earth, for gosh sake. So there's reasons, too, why depression is starting to become more noticed and more spoken about. But the biggest problem we have, and thank God men are starting to loosen up their ties a little bit and ask for help. But I think the number one reason of why we're struggling so much is that people are just afraid to admit they need help. Listen, I was in that arena for many, many years, and I was afraid to ask for help, and I'm a professional in this field. So I understand how hard it is for others to ask for help. But regardless of how hard it is, it's worth it.
Amen. Amen. I could not have said it better. We are going to see if Brother Andy Audio is back, and we could hear from him for a moment.
Okay.
We'd really like for him to have the last few words before we close off this evening.
Yeah, we missed Andy today.
Oh, yes. Brother Andy. You got to unmute first. We can't take the glory. We have to hear from you. We just have to hear from you, brother.
We have to hear from Andy, yes.
Yeah. Thanks so much to David for the amazing insights. As I wrote in the chat there, you're a gem, my friend, and God's richest blessings to you, and many success to you going forward. But, you know, the technical issues, they will arise from time to time.
Well, you know, everyone worked through them perfectly.
And I thank Amanda and Grace for the opportunity to be involved. But, you know, we're going to do this continually, and we have with regards to the technology, and we'll keep on doing God's work and hope that we continue to reach hearts and minds, and people continue to stay blessed, grow as individuals. not only in Christ, but in the world with regards to the many blessings that we can receive and how we can deal with the challenges that come to us on a daily basis, particularly depression, anxiety, withdrawal, burnout, you name it. Much love.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. I love being with you. If you need me again, I'm always here.
Thank you, David. It was a pleasure dialoguing with you for just a brief moment. I appreciated
Yes.
it and I learned a lot. Thank you for joining us. And we do hope that you will join us again because you have so much information that I believe the people need to hear because many are experiencing of they're up against this monster called depression. So thank you so much for gracing us with your presence tonight. I would also like to say thank you, Gracie. Gracie is always there. Every Tuesday, she is there. Thank you so much, Gracie. And we have Amanda joining us and filling our chats with some wonderful questions that really got us going tonight. We do appreciate that. Breaking Out of Depression is aired every Tuesday on LBW Radio with brothers Andy Charles and Wendell Parris. So you have been listening to Breaking Out of Depression. Do have a wonderful evening and see you guys next week, Tuesday, same time and same place. David, have a wonderful evening and thank you once again.